Metal up by 3.5% right now at $15.51 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude oil turning around, now rallying by 3.8% at $23.47 a barrel. Again, recapping losses for stocks with the S&P down 63, a drop of 2.8%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. So let's get into one of the most read and one of the most read guys. It's just true. Joe Nocera, he joins us on the phone from Southampton. We're going to set that aside for a second because then we would just go down the rabbit hole of the shrink next door, and we'll save that for another day. Joe Weber also with us. He is in Brooklyn. That's where we're finding him these days. So, Nocera, I want to start with you. This is a provocative look to some extent about what could happen down the line as it relates to vaccines and basically forcing people or forcing an issue, I should say. Tell us what you found.
Well, I went back and looked at what happened during swine flu. That was my idea. Excuse me. What sort of measures were state governments able to take to kind of get people past that? And one of the things that I discovered was that in the state of New York, the head of the health department had ordered all healthcare workers to take the vaccine under the threat of being fired if they didn't do it by like they were given like a month and a half to do it. And what happened was, they got sued by some nurses and by a union, a workers' union, and the judge ordered her stay. So, in other words, the judge said, "You can't do this," and then I'll rule on the merits later. And in the meantime, the vaccine turned out to be in such short supply that the Governor Patterson at the time, decided it was pointless to try and enforce this, and so they just kind of gave up. So, what it means is that if and when there is a vaccine, we really don't know legally what rights people, and particularly health workers, are going to have in dealing with this. And I can guarantee you that if somebody tries to enforce a vaccine, with the anti-vax movement being what it is today, there will be an uproar and there will be a lot of litigation.
Joe,
over to you.
Come on in, Joel.
Yeah. Well, that's why. Joe, what was the name of the case? Because it is one that I think is going to be in the headlines if and when there's a vaccine.
You would have to ask me that.
I know it's Binion versus Danes, and what I actually thought was what I thought was remarkable about this little bit of sleuthing on Joe's part was that we've actually been down this road before, right? Like we've seen like the swine flu at the time. That was a pandemic, and there were a lot of people who got sick, and here we were racing out a vaccine. And one of the elements that I think is important to keep in mind here was that the healthcare workers said, we don't want to be guinea pigs in this case. And that was actually one of the things that the judge cited when he decided on the stay. So Joe, when you think about this, like New York State was where this case was centered, and it will be probably a state issue before it's anything else. Is that not right?
Oh, without question, it will. I mean, especially given how lax the federal government's been in dealing with this pandemic, it will definitely be a state issue. You can definitely see Cuomo saying you have to do this, and you can definitely see enormous pushback from. And by the way, the same thing's happening here in terms of the vaccine itself. Everybody's talking about we got to rush the vaccine out. We got to rush the vaccine out.
Right.
Vaccines usually take 1.5 years to 2 years.
Right, exactly. Well, and I also think about the bigger worker issue, especially with some of the conversation, that we heard just from our Josh Wingrove, who covers the White House and Washington, about the president talking already about workers getting back to work. And you do wonder, could we get to a point where, okay, if you want to go back to work, you have to get this vaccine. And if you don't take it, it just opens up all these weird questions, Joe. Right.
Absolutely. And that's true. There's another vaccine people are trying to get a hold of, another test. It's an antibody test. It's actually supposed to be fairly close. And the importance of the antibody test is that it can tell you if you're immune. So you can definitely see a situation where the government says you have to take this antibody test,
right?
Because we have to know whether you are immune, and if you're immune, you got to go back to work, or you got to go, you got to be part of the economy again. So you could see the same set of issues. It's not quite the same as a vaccine, but you could definitely see the same set of issues there.
Yeah.
Well, and guys, I do wonder, and Joe, I would love for you to weigh in on this as well. I mean, we are in this moment where it feels like in the name of public health, public safety, our own and those of our communities and whatnot, maybe, we're starting to think about some very basic, rights and what we can and can't do in sort of a different way. And, if you spend too long on Twitter, you can go down some rabbit holes about what the government can and can't do here, right?
Well, to some extent, I think about like 9/11, right? You think about what a tailspin that put our society for a decade plus in terms of civil liberties, and to some extent, like we might be entering a similar phase here, which will test our social fabric.
Right, and just putting on an economic. Go ahead, Jeff.
I wanted to come at it from a different angle. When the polio virus came out, I was a little kid, and I remember my mother taking me to get a polio shot, and that was mandatory. Everybody in the country had to take a polio shot. Nobody complained about it because everybody was so terrified about polio. And so what I think is that we could see an era where we go back to that, where if this virus is bad enough, you could see the courts upholding a government saying you have to do this for the greater good. And I feel like the greater good is something that's kind of been forgotten the last couple of decades. And, however you feel about mandatory vaccines, working on behalf of the greater good is something that society really needs to recapture.
Yeah.
No, it's a great point, and certainly it's something that we have been talking more and more about. I mean, social distancing really only, if like only a couple people are social distancing themselves, then it really it doesn't work so well. All right, Joe Nocera, always thought provocative. Thank you so much joining us on the phone from Southampton, New York. Joe Weber joining us on the phone from Brooklyn. Carol?
But, putting on my economic hat for a second, and just the flip side is that people are concerned that this crisis, if it gets really bad, and in terms of a financial crisis, it took us 10 years to get back the labor market to where it is today. And you wonder about how long that would persist. All right, for those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week continuing. If you're listening on Bloomberg 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business is coming up next. Stick around. We're going to get a check on the bond market, a key story, certainly, in today's session. This is Bloomberg.
That saying, success breeds success, it's true.
Are we seeing any improvement?
Carol Masser and Jason Kelly.
How would you describe your outlook?
Weekday afternoons at 2 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg Business Week, now live on YouTube.
With the Bloomberg Small Business Report, I'm
Night Gathers, and my Now TV watch begins. It will not end until I have finished all 8 seasons of Game of Thrones. I shall take no spoilers, nor skip ahead. Instead, I will defend my house from eternal channel hopping. I am the watcher of brilliant shows like Chernobyl and The Wire. More than enough great TV to last even the longest winter. Your 7-day free trial awaits. To start your night's watch, simply search Now TV. 18 plus new entertainment customers only. Auto renews at $8.99 per month unless cancelled. Terms apply.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
The Bloomberg Business app and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading. We have got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. Stay with Bloomberg right through that closing bell. And, of course, find out how Asian markets react tonight. Here's what's going on. Stocks lower across the board. Stocks have faded as investors saw little progress on a congressional spending package to blunt the fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. Measures of corporate credit risk eased after the Federal Reserve announced a massive second wave of initiatives to support a shuttered U.S. economy. S&P 500 index lower after lawmakers failed to agree on a stimulus bill over the weekend and again fell short of the needed Senate votes today. Technology shares outperformed. NASDAQ 100 index has been fluctuating. So here's where we stand right now. We have got the S&P 500 index lower by 641 points. That is a drop of 3.4%. S&P is down 75, down 3.3%. Again, the Dow down 659, a drop there of 3.4%. And NASDAQ down 78, a drop there of 1.1%. 10-year up 27.30 seconds, yield 0.76%. Gold up 3.2%, 15.46 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude rallying right now, up by 3.3%. WTI at 23.35 a barrel. A Federal Reserve official says unemployment could temporarily hit 30% during the partial shutdown of the U.S. economy. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
St. Louis Fed President James Bullard also says second quarter economic growth could fall 50% during the coronavirus safety clampdown. That's in addition to his 30% unemployment forecast. Bullard says the Fed is working hard to keep everyone whole, and Minneapolis Fed Chief Neil Kashkari says the Fed has the ammunition. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
The General Electric's aviation division is cutting 10% of its U.S. workforce as the coronavirus outbreak saps demand for commercial air travel and upends the global economy. GE down now by 6%. Recapping stocks lower, S&P 500 index down 82 points. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, well, Vinny Del Giudice just teed it up so nicely for us. It's time for a little bit of Business Week economics. On the phone, we've got Steve Matthews, economics reporter for Bloomberg. He's down in Atlanta. Carl Riccadonna, our chief U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics. He's on the phone from New Jersey. Before we get their wisdom, let's get some wisdom that we heard yesterday from the aforementioned Mr. Bullard, President Bullard there of the St. Louis Fed. Steve Matthews was the guy who did that interview. Check it out.
We're putting this initial number as of today at 30%. That's a 30% unemployment rate, but that would be considered good because you're transferring income to the households who are disrupted. I would also encourage...
You think 30% of the labor force could be unemployed in the second quarter?
Yeah, I think so. And that might be the right thing to do because you want to keep everybody whole during the shutdown period. So you want to transfer income to the households that are the most impacted.
All right, and that was the voice of Jim Bullard, the president of the St. Louis Fed, being questioned there. You heard a little bit of his voice, too. Steve Matthews, our economics reporter down in Bloomberg. Steve, I got to tell you, amazing conversation, great headlines, market moving. I heard it mentioned all across the dial this morning and read a lot about it. And Jim Bullard has kept talking today. Tell us where he is on this crisis.
The amazing thing about Bullard is that he talks about 30% unemployment and the economy, being halved in the second quarter, and frames it as good news. You shouldn't view this as a recession. Don't use the word recession this is an investment in public health. And the idea is, I think his idea is, if you see this as, a great American sacrifice, and today he put out a blog post that kind of elaborated on his view that he expressed in the interview yesterday. But if you view this as kind of the great American sacrifice, then it makes perfect sense for the Fed to do all the things that it's doing, and for Congress and the President to basically make everybody whole, do 100% for unemployment insurance, make sure that companies continue to survive however long the shutdown lasts, and that the economy can resume without their missing a beat once this is all over. And it's going to be extremely expensive, and I think that's the way he's framing it, as a way to make it a little bit more easier to swallow the kind of support that's going to be necessary.
Right. And, I stole it from a guest on Bloomberg Radio earlier. It's not about economic stimulus. It's about economic survival at this point. Carl Riccadonna, our chief U.S. economist at Bloomberg Economics, also joining us on the phone from New Jersey. Carl, your take on what the Fed did and what, Mr. Bullard is saying about the unemployment rate in the second quarter, 30%. I mean, those are numbers we have not seen for most of us in our lifetimes, safe to say. How do you see it all at this point?
Well, those are numbers, Carol, that we haven't seen since the Great Depression, really. Right. Now, those aren't just random numbers that Jim Bullard is throwing out there. If we look at a reasonable estimation of hourly workers in the economy, you can kind of come to that type of calculation. So my own team looked at hourly workers and saw that's about 55 to 60% of the economy. Now, some of those hourly workers certainly are still being employed, even though the economy's in lockdown mode. But a lot of them, especially in industries like hotel and leisure, restaurants, et cetera, are seeing a big dislocation. Now, the big test of this is going to come up on Thursday of this week when we get the weekly unemployment claims filings at 8:30 in the morning. Last week, we saw that move from about 220,000 up to about 280,000. There's expectations that number could top 2 million on Thursday morning. Now, a lot of states have said that their unemployment websites are just crashing through the sheer volume of new applicants. So jobless claims will be a canary in the coal mine, really helping us to understand the full extent of shutdown and economic damage that is taking place.
So, Steve Matthews, I do wonder, does the Fed, in your conversation with Mr. Bullard, they still have tools in the toolkit to play with?
It's funny, when the Fed went to zero interest rates, I guess it's just been 8 days ago.
Yeah.
You sometimes heard a little bit of commentary. Well, the Fed's at zero, so they're basically out of tools. And it's like Jay Powell is coming in today and saying, "Yeah, we still have a bazooka." No, it's really more than a bazooka. It's like a machine gun or a tank or whatever military analogy you want to use, and they still have tools, and they are still throwing them at the economy. And it's interesting when you think back at the financial crisis of 2008, it was all about supporting the banking system and the mortgage system and the financial system. Now they're coming in and saying, we're going to support the entire economy.
Yeah.
They're involved in small and medium-sized business lending and supporting the corporate bond market. And it's much more extensive, so it's really unprecedented.
And so, Carl, finish that thought in the last 45 seconds. This is a Fed being incredibly aggressive and maybe with a seemingly wide mandate. Does that surprise you, or is that just a sign of where we are?
I think it's a sign of where we are. It doesn't surprise me at all. Certainly the Fed is using a shock and awe approach here, and as Steve highlights, extending far beyond what we saw during the financial crisis. But then again, we don't have a financial crisis.
Right.
We have an economic crisis and a healthcare crisis. So the Fed is stepping in size, and anyone who said the Fed was out of ammunition should be eating their words after today's actions.
All right, guys. Well said. Thank you so much, Carl Riccadonna, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics, on the phone from New Jersey, Steve Matthews, economics reporter extraordinaire for Bloomberg, joining us on the phone from Atlanta. His interview with Jim Bullard bounced so high, one of the most read as we all got into the market today. And as I said, cited across the country, really stimulating a lot of conversation about sort of where we are, Carol, where we may be going, and really, where the top minds who run monetary policy in this country, where their heads are.
All right, coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about the coronavirus and how it might kill globalization. In the meantime, back to World and National News headlines and back to Bob Moon.
Carol, Jason, tempers flaring and emotions are raw on Capitol Hill as lawmakers run into more roadblocks trying to speed a critically needed economic rescue package of almost $2 trillion through Congress. Where is the help for average Americans? Democrats want to know. They blocked another vote to advance the package, trying to steer more of the assistance to public health and workers. They argue the package is tilted toward corporations. South Dakota Republican John Thune accuses Democrats of slamming the bill without cause. He says they're not being fair to corporations that employ Americans.
It's time to get this done. The American people expect us to act. They need action. We need to work together to get this done for the American people. But don't come out here and say over and over and over again, this is bailouts for big corporations.
Energy Secretary Dan Brulette says the possibility of a joint U.S.-Saudi oil alliance is possible after the crash of oil prices, Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports.
The government is using the situation to fill the strategic petroleum reserve that was created in response to earlier oil shocks. Energy Secretary Dan Brulette noted in a Bloomberg interview.
Market disruptions can place important supply shock on the provision of oil throughout the country. So we've created this petroleum reserve for exactly these types of situations. We'll be working with Congress all throughout the day to ensure funding for that particular project.
Brulette also said the Energy Department is offering the use of its powerful supercomputer to researchers seeking treatments and vaccines against coronavirus. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day. I'm Bob Moon.
Europe, stability, and constant evolution. Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Your job is going to be even more important, I'd argue.
Experience with consistent information.
Would it be a policy mistake if global central banks signaled a more dovish stance?
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
So how do you tackle that? What's your mechanism?
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
3 is a magic number. 300 schemes to help bugs and bees, supporting environmental needs. 8,000 grants for local sports, and performing arts get our support. 7 millionaires every week, the nation's on a winning streak. 30 million pounds to good causes every week. Who'd have thought it? These are magic numbers.
Your numbers make amazing happen. The National Lottery.
Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Cheating or competing? When it comes to business, do you know the difference? Say you run into industry mates at an event. You get to chatting, what's been going on, all pretty standard. Talk turns to business. Looks like some of you are going for the same customers. Maybe you can divide and conquer so everyone gets their piece of the pie. Still just business, right? Wrong. When rival businesses agree to carve up markets, it's called market sharing. It's cheating and illegal, and you could be facing big fines or even prison when you get caught. Search cheating or competing to check your business practices before we check them for you. Brought to you by the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority.
A change is coming. Millions of people across the UK are realising that if their broadband's out of contract, they could be out of pocket. So it's time to switch and save with Vodafone Superfast Broadband for £22.95 a month. Join the Great British Broadband switch today. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
18-month contract subject to credit check. Superfast 1, 73% of customers receive sync speeds above 35 megabits per second. Source Ofcom fairer pricing. Price may change during your contract. See vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Financial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Another day of steep losses for the U.S. stock market. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. This update, this Business Flash, brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, transforming computing professionals into data scientists to meet demand in this fast-growing field. More at njit.edu/Jersey City. Let's head right over to the First Word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, working from home, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. It has been a wild session today as the Senate again lacked the votes to advance the stimulus bill. Dow's currently down 767 points. At one point was only down 52. S&Ps are down 86, and NASDAQ declines by 91. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.75%. Gold is up. Leaders in the Dow, Boeing, which is up. Intel and Home Depot, while UTX, Chevron, and Nike led to the downside. Small caps fall 10 points. Nasdaq Biotechs dropped 30, and the VIX is higher by only 2%. In other news, Boeing to shut down its Seattle area plants for 14 days and said that 32 employees have tested positive for the virus. Wrapping things up, Zoom video soared as much as 26% to a new record high. Live from the First Word breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, I thank you very much, Bill. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type Squawk, SQUAWK, on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio on this Monday. Carol Master, Jason Kelly. Now, we often talk about this with our Andy Brown about globalization and the factors that have been chipping away at it. One factor to consider is the virus and how it might ultimately kill globalization. Andy Brown is Bloomberg New Economy editorial director. He's on the phone in New Hampshire. Andy, good to have you back with us. First of all, you guys all doing okay?
We're doing great up here in New Hampshire. Actually, it's a terrific part of the U.S. to be in right now.
Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about, because as we watch the rest of the world, it's really certainly tough going. You have talked to us in the past about the things that are really chipping away at globalization. This virus, we have seen a lot of fighting, certainly it feels like, or tensions between the U.S. and China as a result of, kind of finger pointing at who caused it. Talk to us, though, about the broader implications potentially for globalization.
Yeah, so the way I look at it is, ultimately globalization, economic globalization depends on trust. That, essentially you've got these incredibly long and complex supply chains, many of them running through China. And companies and countries have got to believe in the integrity of those chains. And they haven't really been tested in the last several decades that much. I mean, you had episodes, for instance, in 2011, you had floods in Thailand, you had an earthquake and tsunami in Japan, and parts of the electronic supply chain came down. And now you have massive global failures of supply chains. And, not just that, you have, this simultaneous erosion of trust between the big actors in the globalization drama. So, most notably and most disastrously right now, between the U.S. and China. Mm-hmm. And, we're seeing that in medicines, in pharmaceuticals, where it's become clear that the U.S. economy is highly dependent, and many would argue dangerously dependent on China. And indeed, we've had insinuations from the Chinese media that, what would happen if China denied, active pharmaceutical ingredients to the U.S. industry. And this has really raised red flags here in the U.S. Has the U.S. become too reliant on China? But you're also seeing it in Europe with borders going up, with Germany, France, accusing each other of hoarding face masks, Italy begging in vain for help for emergency equipment, from the neighbors, and in the end having to look to China for help. And China is seeing all this, by the way, and really trying to take advantage of it.
Well, and obviously the political rhetoric is really escalating too, Andy. I was listening to something this morning that was talking about even the way that the President of the United States is framing this, continuing to refer to it as the Chinese virus, and this relationship that's always been complicated, to say the least, between him and President Xi, getting more complicated in a lot of ways now. How does that contribute to the overall ethos here?
Yeah, so, what's so tragic, we talked about this last week, is right now the U.S. and China ought to be collaborating on everything, on the search for a vaccine. They ought to be working together on the manufacture of face masks, of ventilators, of gowns, and distribution of all of this emergency gear which hospitals right now in the U.S. so desperately need. And in fact, this coronavirus has just opened up a whole new battlefront between them. And Steve Bannon was quoted in the New York Times today saying, we are now in an information hot war, in addition to an economic hot war, by which he meant that, the narrative around the coronavirus, where did it begin? Who's to blame? Has become now, a deeply contested area between these two countries, and they're using it in order to gain geopolitical influence and leverage.
Andy, ask you to be quick. Just got about 30 seconds, but as the horse left the barn, could someone else fix the situation, maybe somebody else in the next administration, or is this how it's going to be between the U.S. and China going forward? Just quickly, if you could.
Unfortunately, U.S.-China relations in this country, in the United States, are very much a bipartisan issue. That it's not at all clear that a Democratic president would alter course. I don't, however, think that a Democratic president, or indeed perhaps any other president, would go to the lengths that Donald Trump does right now in deliberately fanning mistrust, in deliberately infuriating China by calling it the Chinese virus, and Pompeo calling it the Wuhan virus, which, by the way, leads to a terrible backlash against Asian Americans in the United States.
Yeah.
All right. Andy Brown, always good to catch up with you. Thank you so much. Editorial Director of The New Economy here at Bloomberg. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are slumping in the final hour after the Senate failed again to pass the latest economic stimulus bill. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 746, the S&P 500 down 83, the Nasdaq Composite down 90. The International Monetary Fund sees a global recession this year that will be at least as bad as the downturn during the financial crisis. In a statement, the IMF said nearly 80 countries have asked for emergency aid. Layoffs are beginning at Hertz and Avis as demand in all segments of the travel industry continues to collapse. They, along with Enterprise Holdings, are asking the government to include them in an aid package for the industry. Fiat Chrysler is converting a Chinese auto plant to make 1 million face masks a month for U.S. healthcare workers and first responders. A company email obtained by Bloomberg says production is expected to start in the coming weeks. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with little Rocky. Unfortunately, little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Experts like to be part of Bloomberg surveillance.
What does the new Europe look like?
For the same reason we're recommending it to you.
Everything you thought would happen is happening.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, coming up, we're going to check in with Dave Wilson. Very timely topic, Carol, talking buybacks.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been hearing a lot about it in terms of news out of Washington in general. All right, we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's get back, though, to your top business headlines. A look at the trading day. Just got about 29 minutes to go, Charlie Pellet.
29 minutes indeed. Carol Master, we're watching the markets for you. Stay with Bloomberg right through that closing bell. But just as importantly, what about Asian markets? How will they react tonight? Let me give you the numbers. I'll give you the story behind the numbers in just a moment. Right now, I've got the Dow down 850 points. That's a drop of 4.4%. In the year-to-date column, that represents a loss so far this very young year of 35.8%. The S&P 500 index plunging another 98 points, down 4.3%. NASDAQ is down 132 points. For the NASDAQ Composite Index, a loss right now of just about 2%. 10 years up 25-30 seconds, yield 0.76%. Gold surging 3.5%, 15.51 the ounce. And at 15.51 the ounce, gold is at higher by $53 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 2.8%, 23.27 a barrel. So we're seeing a surge today in WTI. Brent 27.09. It is up by 0.4%. The why? Stocks fading as investors see little progress on a congressional spending package to blunt the fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. George Rusniak is head of wealth management at Wells Fargo Private Bank.
Quite frankly, right now, everybody's conviction level is being tested at this point. The Fed's conviction of providing liquidity, obviously they've stepped up here really dramatically. Also, policymakers' conviction to provide sort of a short-term bridge loan, that's still yet to be found. And also investors' conviction within the marketplace. Right now, people are not acting rationally right now. We have to start acting with a little bit longer-term view in mind.
And this morning, the Federal Reserve announcing a massive second wave of initiatives to support a shuttered U.S. economy. Fiat Chrysler Automobile CEO Mike Manley says his company is using an auto plant in China to make 1 million face masks a month to donate to first responders in the U.S. Conversion of the plant began today. Fiat expects to start production in coming weeks, according to an email obtained by Bloomberg News. Again, recapping here, stocks lower across the board, 26 minutes to go ahead of the close. S&P dropping 105 points, down by 4.6%. And that's Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week, right here on Bloomberg Radio.
There's always some time for Sting. Right?
Totally.
Oh, my God.
Is that Sting solo or is that the Police, Dave Wilson?
Sting solo.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, I kind of needed a little bit of that today.
Yeah, that would be good. Maybe pour a glass of wine, listen to some Sting.
And then I can't wait till we get to Brand New Day. Then I'll really be happy.
That'll be good. Well played. All right, Dave Wilson, talk to us about your chart.
Well, because it's been down so long, it's sort of the other side of that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why it seemed to fit, because what I did was take a look at the S&P 500 buyback index. This is an indicator for companies that have spent the most over the previous 12 months, basically, relative to their market value to buy back shares. And so what we've seen is that a whole lot of companies are not buying back shares anymore. I mean, AT&T and Macy's are two that come to mind that have suspended repurchase programs. There are a whole lot more where they come from. But what we're seeing is that if you compare this buyback index to the S&P 500, as BTIG's Julian Emanuel did last week, you find out that it started losing altitude, you might say, even before we saw companies kind of back away from share repurchases. In fact, in the middle of last week, it got to the lowest level relative to the S&P 500 since May 2010. So you're talking about almost 10 years. And at that point, it was down 17% from a peak in November. So it's not like all these companies deciding they're not going to buy back shares anymore in the midst of this bear market, kind of snuck up on people in a sense, because you look at this relationship and it shows you that investors are kind of backing away from the companies most inclined about buy back shares even before.
But it's logical, Dave, right? Like if you think about it, this environment that we're going to, when you hear, Jim Bullard talk about 30% unemployment rates or something, like we know that certainly the second quarter, potentially the third quarter, these are going to be tough quarters, if not the rest of the year, and that companies who are struggling just to find cash at this point or shore up their balance sheets, they're not going to have a lot of extra cash necessarily around to do buybacks. And certainly any company or any industry that gets an assist from the government, that has been one of the conditions that, certainly the president has put out there, that they can't do buybacks.
Right. And all these things kind of play into the situation as it stands. But of course, if you think back to late last year, early this year, if you were backing away from the buyback-driven stocks, it's probably because you figured they were so expensive that people were not going to kind of step in and purchase them, or that the companies might hesitate about giving back cash to shareholders that way. So, you put it all together. And what we're seeing is a continuation of a trend in a sense, and not just a trend emerging. Right. And the magnitude of the decline you just haven't seen historically. The chart goes back to 1995. If you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Well, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. And that is a rare thing, Carol and Dave, that Donald Trump and Elizabeth Warren both agree on, which is
well said.
Companies shouldn't be doing buybacks. All right, Dave, we'll catch up with you a little bit later on, right after the close of trading for your stock of the day. Do want to bring you one quick headline. Vice President Mike Pence saying that New York has in effect become the virus epicenter here in the United States. And listen, for those of us who live in the tri-state area, Carol, that's not a shock.
No, not a shock at all, which is why I think when people were talking about the president and others talking about, thinking about workers going back to work, we couldn't even get our heads around it here in New York City.
It's impossible to think about.
Because we just anticipated getting worse. Looks like the vice president is giving an update because there's some other headlines coming across saying that the Senate and the House must act to pass a virus stimulus program this week. Also talking about ventilators and talking about directing states to ID devices that could be ventilators. So a lot of conversations, as we know, going back and forth between the federal government and the states specifically on some of that equipment, much needed equipment. And we know certainly here in New York, we heard Governor Cuomo talking about it today and really throughout the weekend.
Right. We'll keep an eye on those headlines. Obviously, wanting to hear everything out of Washington these days, especially if we start to hear movement out of Capitol Hill about agreement between the Democrats and the Republicans on this fiscal stimulus.
There's one other headline crossed at the top of the hour. The Trump administration considering reopening the Obamacare exchange, that coming from the New York Times. So it seems like everything is being considered. All right, let's get back to World and National News headlines and back to Bob Moon. Hi, Bob.
Jason, Carol, thank you. Bruce, brace yourself. You ain't seen nothing yet. That's what New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is counseling people about what's ahead with the coronavirus spread across America.
This is still the relative quiet before the storm. We're seeing that number go up, but you're going to see it go up exponentially. You haven't seen the hospitals overwhelmed yet. You will. So all of these, we're still on the up trajectory, and we haven't come close to the apex.
Cuomo says the number of positive coronavirus cases in the state surged to more than 20,000, with more than half the cases in New York City. During an interview, Cuomo said there will be more. After days of around-the-clock negotiating, the U.S. Senate today again failed to advance legislation that would pump well over $1 trillion into the American economy to programs to help companies losing business during the coronavirus outbreak. Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy took the Senate floor to chastise Democrats.
You know what the American people are thinking right now? They're thinking that the brain is an amazing organ. It starts working in a mother's womb, and it doesn't stop working until you get elected to Congress.
Today's measure faltered after it failed to get the necessary 60 votes in the 100-member chamber to clear it over a procedural hurdle. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Cheating or competing? When it comes to business, do you know the difference? Say you run into a competitor at an industry event. You get to chatting about business, how you're both doing. All pretty standard. Now talk turns to margins. Maybe someone mentions prices. Maybe you agree to stop undercutting each other. Still just business, right? Wrong. Coordinating prices with your competitors is called price fixing. It's cheating and illegal. And you could be facing big fines or even prison when you get caught. Search cheating or competing to check your business practices before we check them for you. Brought to you by the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Immediately, so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell here with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all trading lower. Right now, we've got NASDAQ as, quote, the bright spot. It is down 74 points, down by 1%. S&P is down 76. That is a 3.3%. Dow Jones Industrial Average, it is down by 627 points, down by 3.3%. 10-year right now, the yield 0.74%, gold up 3.8%, and crude oil up by 3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home? Honey, please, I'll do the driving. Drive on. Excuse me, I want to drive. Just drive, baby.
What's the question? Get drive.
This is the drive to the close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
It is time for the drive to the close. Charlie Bobrinskoy is back with us, Vice Chairman and Head of Investment Group at Arrow Investments. They've got roughly $13.2 billion in assets under management. Joining us on the phone in Chicago. Charlie, really nice to have you with us. Tell us, first of all, I hope you, your family, your team, everybody's doing okay.
Yes, they are. I'm spending a lot of time with my family.
How's that going? No, I'm just kidding. What is it like in Chicago, Charlie? You know, I mean, we're so focused, being here in New York and sort of what it's like here. But, your governor, J.B. Pritzker, has made some similar steps to ours in terms of, really locking things down.
It's an interesting question. I think the coasts have been hit much harder in terms of actual cases, impact on hospitals. Obviously, New York, Washington State, and California account for the majority of the cases and deaths. And we are seeing some activity in the Midwest. This is more concentrated in cities, but in general, very little impact. So this is one of those situations where there are obviously a lot of farmers, a lot of rural areas in the middle of the country that are frankly not affected on a daily basis.
So, Charlie, when you hear what's coming out of Washington, what you've seen the Fed do at this point, and what you're seeing obviously in Chicago in terms of the impact and just the impact on global markets overall, I mean, do you agree with the steps that have been taken so far, and what do you think Congress needs to do?
Obviously there are people that are more knowledgeable than I am, but clearly Governor Cuomo said something today, which I think a lot of us agree with, and which the Wall Street Journal editorial page has said, which is that this is having a big effect on the economy, and it is not good for the health care and the health of our citizens to have an imploded economy. And so there are going to be times in the future, not tomorrow, but when we have to get back to work. And that's going to be done in a prudent way. It's going to be done when it is not going to endanger our citizens, but it is going to need to happen because we cannot have all of us staying home, and an imploded economy is not good for anybody.
And so, Charlie, put on your investment hat here as you talk to the team. What are you guys thinking about in terms of where the market is trading at this point, and how you approach this as savvy investors?
So what we do is try not to look at the market as a whole, but look at individual companies. And the basic analysis is try to find names that are going to have a very tough time on the short term, because the market always looks at the short term, but are going to be fine in the long term. And one key differentiator in that is good balance sheets. If I had to say one thing that the stock market doesn't do particularly well, it's analyze the credit of companies. And so we at Ariel pride ourselves on doing good credit work, investing in companies that are sure going to have a tough quarter, but are going to be fine in the long run.
So where does that lead you to? I mean, we always talk to you about Tiffany, and as we know, LVMH is in the process of taking it over. You sent some notes over, and you said that if LVMH wanted to get out of the deal, they could by claiming a material adverse change. Do you think that's likely?
Yeah, so to be very careful, I'm not saying that they would win in the end if they claimed a material adverse change, but they clearly could, if they wanted to get out of the deal. We saw in 2008, there were a lot of acquisitions that got canceled because of either financing outs or material adverse change outs. And so at this point, I think Tiffany would be able to make the argument that there hasn't been a downturn, a material downturn in their actual results. But again, if the leadership of MVH wanted to, Louis Vuitton wanted to get out of this deal, I think they'd have a legitimate argument. Now, so far, it doesn't look like they want to get out of this.
Right.
But obviously, that's why the stock is trading at a significant discount to the deal price.
And so take us inside a company or inside your analysis of a company like Tiffany in this particular case. A few months ago, we were talking about, it's like, maybe they're going to be impacted or they are impacted by Hong Kong protests and the luxury market there and maybe the luxury market in China. This is now a global pandemic. How do you look at a luxury name like that, and how does that extend into some of your other analysis?
Yeah, so Tiffany is a special case because there's a takeover. But if it was a standalone company, that would be the exact kind of company that we would want to own. There's no doubt that they're going to have a short-term downturn in sales. People are not going to be making big luxury purchases. But in the long run, this is not going to affect people's desire to own jewelry. And it had a great balance sheet. It had a great brand. All of those things are going to be fine whenever we get to the other side of this. And the difference between this downturn and the 2008 downturn, in 2008, we really had to worry about whether the whole banking system was going to survive. Right. This time, I think we can all see the other side of this. It's just a question of whether the other side is 3 months away, 6 months away, or a year away.
Do you think we are at or near the peak of bad news?
So that's a great question. It's one we spend a lot of time thinking about because it really is the question. When the bad news, right now the bad news is coming faster and faster and faster, and the number of deaths is accelerating. But that's going to turn in a relatively short period of time. And we think we will reach, the pace of bad news is probably right now the worst. We're going to actually reach a peak of bad news, which is sort of the first derivative, around, we think, within less than a month. And so a month from now, the bad news is not going to stop. People are still going to be passing away, but the pace of bad news will be better, and people will be more convinced that we can see the other side. And so we think we could start to get a rally in confidence inside of a month.
And in the meantime,
wait, can I just say, I'm just kind of sitting there with the month, Charlie.
I saw it. I'm the only person, Charlie, by the way, in our current setup that can see Carol's face because we're connected by video conference. And I saw it fall when you said inside a month, which, I think is hard for people to sort of get their heads around. Do you?
Well, frankly, there are some people thinking it's going to be a lot more than a month.
True.
So I think I don't want to be Pollyanna-ish here. I don't want to tell you everything is going to be fine next week. I think Governor Cuomo has seen the numbers, and he's saying that the hospital situation is going to get worse. Now, I will say this, Carol, to try to brighten your day a little bit. I think there's a chance that businesses are going to start to open up maybe in 11 or 12 days. So it could be less than 4 weeks, but it's not going to be this week.
Yeah. All right. Well, we always really appreciate your insights. So thoughtful. Charlie Bobrinskoy is the vice chairman, head of the investment group at Ariel Investments, looking after about $13.2 billion. He joined us on the phone from Chicago, Carol.
And I have to say, I can't remember which official was saying it, whether it was Governor Cuomo, about, is it 98 or 99% of people who get the virus do recover? And so we do have to remember that flip side to it. And that speaks to the conversations we're having out of the White House and elsewhere in the business community about, getting back to work at some point because, we're going to need to if we expect this economy to get back to normal. All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week, watching us on YouTube. I'm Carol Masser. He is Jason Kelly. Coming up, though, we've got the closing bell, and we'll look at some of the stocks on the move right here on Bloomberg.
Coffee or full breakfast? Have it at daybreak.
Bloomberg has more from Hong Kong.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern. Bloomberg Daybreak.
We get a policy decision from the Federal Reserve on...
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
A pack needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Sound of the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Solo, truly historic times at the exchange. Kevin Fitzgibbons, Chief Security Officer at the NYSE, ringing that closing bell. It was a down day for the U.S. stock market with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all plunging once again on this Monday. The S&P down another 68 points, lower by 3% at 2236. Dow Industrials down 597 points, down almost 600, a drop right now of 3.1%. NASDAQ down 18 for the NASDAQ Composite Index. That was a decline today of just about 3%. So the selling continues. Stocks fell further as investors saw little progress on a congressional spending package to blunt the fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. Also today, the Federal Reserve announcing a second wave of initiatives to support a shuttered U.S. economy. Well, as for what's going on in markets, Michael Darda is chief economist at MKM Holdings.
I have no idea if we're, within a few basis points of the low, or if equity markets are going to continue to fall and make new lows by a wider proportion. But what I do know historically is that down 30+% is your run-of-the-mill bear market, and no one's going to be able to time this thing in terms of when equity markets bottom out.
He was interviewed this morning on Bloomberg Surveillance. General Electric's aviation division cutting 10% of its American workforce as the coronavirus outbreak saps demand for commercial air travel and upends the global economy. GE shares dropping today by another 6%. Netflix upgraded to outperform from neutral at Baird. Shares of Netflix today among the few gaining stocks. Netflix remains up 11% year to date. Today, the stock advanced by 8.2%. 10-year yield 0.75%, gold up 3.6%. Again, recapping losses for stocks. S&P down 68, down 3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Move around. Motion creates the motion.
I feel the earth move under my feet.
You move like they do. I've never seen anyone move that fast.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Something's called movers and shakers. They cost a little more, but that name cracked me up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed. Time to take a look at some of the movers and shakers as we wrap up this first trading day of the week. Carol Master along with Jason Kelly right here on Bloomberg Business Week. So, Charlie, breaking down those closing numbers. We were bouncing around here in the equity markets. As for the big picture for the S&P 500, most names, Jason, once again, lower today. 400 names to be exact. But we did have a fair amount of gainers. 101 names in the S&P showing some gains in today's session, 4 unchanged. What's interesting, at the top of the pack, Royal Caribbean, Royal Cruise Lines, I should say. That stock was up 18.4%. It's your number one gainer in the S&P 500. And, a lot of it has to do what companies are doing to really shore up their financial pictures against the virus and against the really meltdown in the market and the economy. Royal Caribbean obtaining, I should say, a $2.2 billion secured term credit line to bolster its finances after the virus really shut down the industry. With this new facility, Royal Caribbean says it now has over $3.6 billion at its disposal. That includes cash deposits and other existing revolving credit that has not yet been used. And this is what it's all about, right? We want to make sure those more vulnerable companies, they're going to have a tougher time potentially getting through this downturn. But Royal Caribbean showing, okay, here's what we've got on tap on our balance sheet. And so investors reacting, sending that stock up a lot in today's session.
Those stocks are not for the faint of heart these days, right? I mean, just wild swings, and so much of it is going to depend on a lot of unknowns in terms of when the business comes back and how eager people are to jump on a ship. Cody, that's your second biggest gainer in the S&P. Is also a pretty volatile name, if we're being honest. I feel like all the time, and we've talked about this in this program before, it's one of the biggest gainers or biggest losers. But they got an upgrade from an analyst basically saying they think management's doing a good job cutting costs and CapEx, preserving some cash flow. And interestingly, the company already preparing for, quote, a post-crisis demand rebound in Asia. So you do start to think, are we going to see before too long? There's still big question marks around the Chinese consumer, given everything that China went through, that we're now going through here in the United States and in Europe. But do you start to see some of that demand pick up? We'll start to see that in names like Apple, certainly, and other places, Starbucks being another good example of that.
Yeah, I do think that there is a good case to be made for a lot of pent-up demand on the other side of this virus. And I think some of it is also contingent, certainly here in the U.S., on the safety net programs that are put into place for those that don't have them on their own individuals. So we shall see if that happens. But you're right. China will be the first indicator of all of this as they kind of get back to so-called normal. Hey, I want to take a look at two of the biggest decliners in the S&P. Macy's, the number one decliner in the S&P, Jason, down 20%. And then Kohl's down more than 17%. Watching, Macy's, it's been a troubled story heading into the virus, no doubt about it. But I think this company on track, I think it might be a record low today. In fact, they did elect to access about $1.5 billion available under its credit facility. I think we got that information last week, but they are also suspending its regular quarterly cash dividend, and that's going to begin in the second quarter. We're going to increasingly see that from a lot of companies.
Quick look at the VIX volatility down 5.9%, closing at 62.15. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson. Open up the door, it's Dave.
Who?
Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson!
All right, Dave Wilson back with us with your stock of the day. What you looking at?
Looking at Signet Jewelers, Jason. If you ever went to Jared, began a kiss with Kay, or visited Zales diamond stores, then you've done business with Signet. The company owns all three jewelry retailers, and they account for most of its sales. Signet traces its history back to 1949, when the company was founded in the UK. These days, it's legally based in Bermuda and run out of Akron, Ohio. Its equity has been publicly traded in the U.S. since 1988. The ticker is SIG. Signet peaked in October 2015, about 18 months after the company bought Zales for more than $700 million. Since then, the shares have fallen each year, and today they reached their lowest price in 24 years. The latest decline followed Signet's decision to suspend North American operations in response to the coronavirus. The stores closed as of today, and the company only said they would reopen, quote, as pandemic conditions allow. Now, Signet, they generate about 90% of their revenue from North America, so the business is basically shut down at this point. And in response, the shares tumbled 24.5%.
That's a lot. That's, talk about a killing. All right. Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Certainly a name to watch going forward to see what happens. Signet Jewelers, ticker is SIG. Dave Wilson, our Bloomberg Stocks columnist. I mean, we're just seeing dramatic swings, Jason, in terms of the market. But I do think it's interesting what Charlie Bobrinskoy reminded us. They are stock pickers, and they are looking at individual stories and, thinking about, okay, once we get beyond this, what are the businesses that will still be with us? And a lot of these businesses, certainly these publicly held, will be around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Interesting seeing some headlines cross about Smucker's, JM Smucker, saying that they're going to provide up to 12 weeks of pay and benefits for workers affected by all of this. So it does feel like you're starting to see companies, maybe in a very positive way, feel some public pressure to come out and say what they're going to do. The other interesting thing, and I bet we're going to dig into this more later in the week, executives cutting their own compensation. I feel like that's catching on a little bit. We heard it from some of the executives at GE today. Yeah. And I do wonder, in this age of, I dare say, inflated executive compensation,
and inequalities,
see more people biting the bullet there. So something we didn't see as much back in the financial crisis, and that may be a lesson learned.
All right, let's get to world and national news headlines. For that, we turn things over to Ed Baxter. He's out there in San Francisco. Hi, Ed.
Hi, Carol. Stimulus bill has failed a second time to pass a procedural vote in the Senate. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says all Americans need to be included.
We're very close to reaching a deal. Very close. And our goal is to reach a deal today.
But Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says a deal was almost done.
11th hour demands the Democrats have decided are more important than Americans' paychecks and the personal safety of doctors and nurses.
And now the Democrats say a deal is very close, and Bloomberg's Emily Wilkins says despite some heated debate,
things are moving very quickly right now. Things are very much still up in the air. Negotiations are ongoing.
So there is hope things can get done today. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says the state is issuing an emergency order.
We are today issuing an emergency order that says to all hospitals, you must increase your capacity by 50%. You must.
Now, some hospitals have been reporting they will run out of some treatment supplies next week. President Donald Trump is publicly messaging that he may want to end the social distancing orders. He has tweeted, "We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself. At the end of the day, 15-day period will make a decision as to which way we want to go." So a definite mixed message is out there now. Health officials say the current guidelines must be maintained. Canada's Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau.
Team Canada and the Canadian Paralympic team made the tough decision not to send athletes to the Olympic and Paralympic Games this summer.
He says he knows it's disappointing, but it is the right call. New deaths in Italy, the epicenter of the outbreak in Europe now, have slowed for a second day. U.S. health officials are saying an experimental vaccine could be available to healthcare workers as soon as...
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Can you give us your broad sense of the main driver behind the latest weakness?
They talk with the most interesting people.
When you talk to your clients, are they taking this seriously?
Lisa Abramowitz.
What's going to be the main driver of growth?
Paul Sweeney.
What did you take away from those Amazon numbers last night?
Bloomberg Markets.
Is it as ominous this time around?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org. Because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
So you run into a competitor at an industry event. You get to chatting about business, how you're both doing. All pretty standard. Then someone mentions prices. Maybe you agree to stop undercutting each other. Still just business, right? Wrong. Coordinating prices with your competitors is called price fixing. It's cheating and illegal, and you could be facing big fines or even prison when you get caught. Search cheating or competing to check your business practices before we check them for you. Brought to you by the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got smart breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown, today. The AA. Drive smart. See the AA.com for details.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
Career, one where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. First trading day of the new week. It was a losing Monday with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. Investors saw little progress on a congressional spending package to blunt the fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. Measures of corporate risk, credit risk eased after the Federal Reserve announced a massive second wave of initiatives to support a shuttered U.S. economy. S&P 500 index did decline despite a late session surge after lawmakers failed to agree on a stimulus bill over the weekend and again fell short of the needed Senate votes for a deal. S&P down 67 points, a drop of 2.9%. NASDAQ down 18, that was a drop of 0.3%. Dow Jones Industrial Average, which had been down as many as 960 points, down 5%. End of the session down 582, declining by 3%. The 10-year up 21 seconds with a yield of 0.78%. Gold up 3.7%, $15.53 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 4.3%, $23.60 a barrel. Recapping, S&P down 67, a drop of 2.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And just a quick headline, everyone. Twitter is seeing GAAP operating loss in the first quarter, revenue down slightly year over year. So a little update from Twitter there. We do want to talk a little bit more about the markets. Our next guest, often ranked among the top money managers. He's seen many market cycles and dislocations. He has been running his own shop since 1996. Neil Hennessy is with us. He's Chief Investment Officer at Hennessy Funds, and he's joining us on the phone from Novato, California. Neil, great to have you here with Jason and myself. Hope you and your family are doing okay. Tell us a little bit about kind of your world on a personal and professional level. What it's like right now for you?
Well, it's nothing's changed, Carol and Jason, from the standpoint I get up at 3:34 in the morning, and I get showered and shaved, put on my suit and tie, and come to the office. Now, obviously, everybody's not working in the office. We're remote, so we have our disaster recovery plan in place, and it's working extremely well. So now I'm at the office, still doing business every day, and trying to calm the markets as best as possible. But nobody seems to be listening the last 2.5 weeks.
And so, what do you make of that? I mean, how do you sort of put these markets over the last couple of weeks in perspective? You've been doing this for a while. You were there in 1987. You saw, that Black Monday. How does this all sort of fit in your historical frame?
Well, let me just take you back into the world of reality. You know that this virus is very contagious, but not as contagious as panic, and that's what we have going on. So if you go back to 2008 and you look at the similarities between then and today's, two things were happening. Number one, the stock market was cutting your investments by 30 or 40%, the same as they are today. But back in that time, what everybody thought was their sale face was retirement was their house. They couldn't lose money, but it was a double whammy. So not only did you see the stock market come down, their houses were coming down. Today, you're seeing 30, 40% cut on the stock market, but people are very fearful of catching the coronavirus and dying. The difference, though, is the underlying economic fundamentals in the market in 2008 were very, very weak. Today, the underlying fundamentals of the economy are very, very strong, and the banks have never been any stronger, and they're getting crushed in this market for no reason.
So for multiple quarters because of kind of the damage that's been...
Be a barber, stylist, a nail. So when I look at this, I'm just looking at it, it's the same as what I've looked over the last 10 years. We had 23 or 22 corrections up in the last 2 years up until this one, which is a 23rd correction. Albeit this has been hit hard, but it wasn't hit hard because of financials. It was hit hard because of an external affair, i.e. the virus. But when you look back at those pullbacks, you're talking about 16 of those 22 were between 5 and 10%. 6 of them were between 10 and 20%. Now we've gone over here to 35, 40%. And so everybody says, well, we're in a bear market. No, you're not in a bear market. What you're in is a panic market. And so it's a double, there's a lot of difference in that. But there's a lot of noise out there too, right, Jason and Carol. I mean, it was the impeachment, it was the tariffs, it was the taxes, it was the interest rates, the election, coronavirus, virus, North Korea, you name it.
Right.
But, the underlying fundamentals are good.
And so what are your clients saying? I mean, are they calling you up? Are they emailing you? Are they panicking? And what's the tone and tenor of the folks that you talk to?
It's interesting that you say that, because you get back into 2008 and 9, and there was panic. People were just calling up and saying, get me out. And just even the ones that stayed in, even the ones that stayed in, until we had that 1,000-point drop in one day in a heartbeat, people were still, that's when they threw up their hands and got out. Interesting enough is, as bad as this market's been hit, and we understand it, but it's not even a headline anymore. So the market gets popped for 3,000 points in a day, and it's not even a headline. Everything's about the coronavirus. We'll see what happens if people open their quarterly statements in the beginning of April.
Right. I refuse to open up my statement. No, because there is on some logical level, Neil, that, I look at this and say, we just need to get through this. But I do think, you do wonder about what kind of, you talk about small business. Small business is so important to our economy, and you do wonder about the lasting damage on that group and whether or not, that kind of holds us down. We've got to take a break. We want to come back and talk some more with you. So just hang on for a second. We're talking with Neil Hennessy. He's Chief Investment Officer and Portfolio Manager at Hennessy Funds, joining us on the phone from Novato, California. So coming up, Jason, we'll talk a little bit more about the markets. I want to see what he has to say, and I'm curious to see if he's been doing some buying as a result of this, because I think you got to look at some of these names and just be like, wow, they're on sale.
Spoiler alert, I think he has.
Thanks for that, Kelly. All right, you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio, watching us on YouTube. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly. We'll be back in just a moment right here on Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Disappointment but not despair on Wall Street as Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell failed to push through a $2 trillion plan to help businesses and workers laid off or closed due to the coronavirus. Losses fell in the 0.25% to 3% range. The Dow down 582 points to 18,592. The Nasdaq down 19 to 6861. The S&P falling 68. Even though the Federal Reserve made it easier for businesses to get credit in and said it would put no limit on bond buying. Money managers say that's less important than direct government stimulus. Boeing shares took off, though, up 11%, even before the company halted trading temporarily to say it would close plants in the Seattle area for 2 weeks due to the coronavirus state of emergency and pay workers during the shutdown. CVS is looking to expand its hiring 50,000 workers and says it will target its hiring efforts at those who were laid off from Hilton and Marriott hotels. I'm Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with little Rocky. Unfortunately, little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Dave presents an evening of exclusive stand-up comedy in association with Calm, featuring Joel Dommett.
I was like, Dad, do you love my brother more than me? He went, I've just got more in common with him.
Kiri Pritchard McLean.
They're either holding an ugly baby or a heavy fish. I don't know why it's those two.
Judy Love.
Where's all my big girls? Okay, some of you be lying to yourself.
And John Robbins.
Never got my head round why 100% humidity wasn't water.
An exclusive stand-up special. Comedy Against Living Miserably. Tomorrow at 9 on Dave.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
Of the curve. At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Are you seeing a lot more buying power on the part of younger people in China?
Financial news made in Asia for use everywhere.
It is a bit of a waiting game.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
And coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with Neil Hennessy, get his look at where he's investing in this upside-down market. First, let's get to Charlie Pellet. He's got an update on what's going on after the close. Hey, Charlie.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. Another day of upside down with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ continuing to slump despite a late session surge after lawmakers failed to agree on a stimulus bill over the weekend and again fell short of the needed Senate votes for a deal today. Tech shares, though, outperformed NASDAQ 100 index, eking out a small gain as negotiations continued on Capitol Hill. Trading volumes did remain above average. Here are the closing numbers. Today we had the S&P 500 index dropping another 3% today. S&P falling by 67 points. That was down now to 2237 on the S&P. The Dow down 582, down by 3%. We've got NASDAQ lower today, down 18 points. That was a drop there of just about 0.3%. The 10-year yield right now is 0.75%. This headline from the Bloomberg Professional Service: the United Kingdom has ordered all of its citizens to stay home except for essential reasons. Again, that headline now crossing the Bloomberg Professional Service: the United Kingdom ordering citizens to stay home except for essential reasons. Essential reasons gold up today by 3.7%, $15.53 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 5.6%, $23.87 a barrel. Bottom line, it was a down day on Wall Street. So when might the news start getting better? That question earlier today for Charlie Bobrinskoy with Ariel Investments right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
We think we will reach the pace of bad news is probably right now the worst. We're going to actually reach a peak of bad news, which is sort of the first derivative, around, we think, within less than a month. So months from now, the bad news is not going to stop. People are still going to be passing away, but the pace of bad news will be better, and people will be more convinced that we can see the other side. So we think we could start to get a rally in confidence inside of a month.
And again, recapping here with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining today. S&P, by the way, down almost 35% from its February 19th record. It did mark the lowest close of Donald Trump's presidency. Recapping, S&P down 67, a drop of 2.9%. Gold advanced 3.6%, $15.52 the ounce. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. We are here with Neil Hennessy, Chief Investment Officer, Portfolio Manager at Hennessy Funds. They've got roughly $3 billion in assets under management. He's still with us from Nevada, California. Neil, thanks so much for hanging around. I do have one more question about small businesses, because, do you consider yourself a small business?
Oh, very much so, but not as small as some of the businesses in town. We can withstand this down market here. Just because we have more cash than we have debt, and we've been around a long time, and I've seen a lot of things, so we play everything conservatively. But at the same time, some of these small businesses, I know some of our board of directors are laying off 80% of their people because they've lost the business. Could be a restaurant business, could be a resort, it could be like in the linen business, they're just getting crushed. So it just goes all the way down the line.
Right. And listen,
some aren't going to survive.
We just have headlines crossing the Bloomberg right now about the UK closing all its non-essential shops, banning all social events. The Prime Minister there, Boris Johnson, putting the whole of UK in a lockdown for at least 3 weeks. A lot of small businesses obviously being impacted there. Yeah. In terms of what you think, Neil, that our government needs to do, like you guys are in a good position, as you just pointed out, but other small businesses, which are so important to the U.S. economy, the backbone that we constantly say, we need to make sure that any kind of program, there's a ton of assistance for them. Agreed?
Well, I think so, but, people have to learn from the lessons, too, that, always have a rainy day fund. Just don't spend it all because everything's going well. So hopefully businesses will learn, and especially small ones, to keep putting money away for an unforeseen event like we're seeing today. At the same time, this is going to change human habits, too, in my opinion, simply because maybe people are going to take their health a little more seriously and wash their hands more and think of others. So I think overall it'll be good for business long term. When I look at the overall market, Carol, and everybody's panicking in here, what would you rather own personally? A 10-year U.S. government bond yielding 0.75%, or a 30-year U.S. government bond yielding 1.3%,
right?
Or the Dow Jones 30s yielding 3.5% for the next 30 years?
No, I get it.
So it really doesn't take a genius.
I got to ask you, though, because what you said about the rainy day funds, don't you agree that applies to large corporations, too, whether it's a Boeing, whether it's a cruise line or an airline?
Correct. And if you look at the S&P 500, they're sitting on over $5 trillion in cash and short-term investments. The Dow Jones, those 30 companies, are sitting on $1.7 trillion in cash and short-term investments. They have the cash on the sidelines.
So they don't need...
They'll weather the storm.
So they don't need assistance from the government?
Well, I'm not sure. If you look at the airlines that's just getting decimated, I mean, if nobody's flying because they're scared, you notice they're starting to go back to taking cargo. So you can take a lot more cargo, which is the cost is going to go up on that. But the airlines are really hurting, but you need the airlines. The nation needs the airlines. So if they have to get bailed out, they get some help. And I know that upsets a lot of people when they look at big business getting the money. But this wasn't caused by big business. 2008 and 9 was caused by business, not today. That back then, the taxpayer got paid back and more. So this is different. This is something out of the Twilight Zone, to be honest.
All right, Neil, only got about 45 seconds left. Give us one name that you like in this market right now.
Well, it's funny because the market was down another, 600 points today, and you can look at something called an Itron. And here's a company that, 2 weeks ago was $79 a share. Now it's $49 a share. But even though the market came down today 600 points, this was up $1.58. And you ask why? And the reason being is they just make smart meters. Everybody knows what a smart meter is for gas or water or whatever. The difference is you can buy $1 revenue in this company for 80 cents. They make 3 to 4 to 4.50 depending on what's going to happen here in the short term, and they don't pay a dividend, so they could initiate a dividend at any time. So just because the market goes down, 600 points doesn't necessarily mean that every stock went down and every company's going broke.
All right. Well, we always enjoy catching up with you. You're a man of your convictions, Neil Hennessy. We really appreciate it. The head of the Hennessy Funds, an entrepreneur in his own right, joining us from Novato, California. Stay safe out there, just north of San Francisco, or just in the San Francisco Bay Area, I believe North Bay is where Novato is. So coming up, Carol, we're going to talk a little bit about the distressed market.
And I just want to mention Nordstrom suspending share repurchases and also suspending its quarterly cash dividend beginning in the second quarter. So increasingly, this is a story that we're hearing from a lot of companies. All right, let's get back to World and National News headlines, and let's check in once again with Ed Baxter in San Francisco.
Yeah, Carol, and developing just in the past few minutes, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has put a stay-home order except for essential reasons. This lockdown, he says, for at least 3 weeks. U.S. Congress working on trying to pass a stimulus bill today after it failed for a second time in procedural vote, much to the chagrin of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell.
They ought to be embarrassed, Mr. President. In fact, I've heard from some of them who are embarrassed.
But House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says everybody needs to be taken into consideration.
The Senate Republican bill put corporations first, but because of the insistence of Leader Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats, progress has been made. We urge the Senate to move closer to the values in the Take Responsibility for Workers and Families Act.
So Bloomberg's Emily Wilkins says work is being done as we speak, but
we saw a lot of debate from the Senate that was
very feisty compared to what we normally see from the body. There's definitely a lot of tensions that are running high right now.
Yeah, both sides say they want it done today. Some New York City health providers say if not urgently restocked, some supplies will run out next week. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has issued an emergency order saying hospitals must expand their capacity by 50%.
We have 3,000 ICU beds. We may need between 18 to 37,000.
On the brighter side, he says more testing is being done.
So we're doing 16,000, which compared to China, South Korea per capita is even higher.
And U.S. health officials are saying that experimental vaccine could be available by the end of the year. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Cheating or competing? When it comes to business, do you know the difference? Say you run into a competitor at an industry event. You get to chatting, what's been going on, all pretty standard. Talk turns to business. Looks like you're bidding on the same projects. If you agree to split the contracts, you could both walk away winning. Still just business, right? Wrong. Agreeing with your competitors who is going to win a particular bid is called bid rigging. It's cheating and illegal. And you could be facing big fines or even prison when you get caught. Search cheating or competing to check your business practices before we check them for you. Brought to you by the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
You by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet repeating our top story. The United Kingdom's going into lockdown tonight after Boris Johnson ordered sweeping measures to stop people leaving their homes as the coronavirus pandemic spread across the United Kingdom. The Prime Minister approved radical measures to ban all unnecessary movement of people for at least 3 weeks. Police will be breaking up gatherings and will have the power to fine individuals who break the tough new laws. Again, this in the United Kingdom. Stocks lower. U.S. stocks began the week on a down note as investors saw little progress on a congressional spending package to blunt the fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. S&P dropping another 67 points, down 2.9%. The Dow down 582 points, down by 3%. NASDAQ was down 18, a drop there of 0.3%. The NASDAQ 100 index did eke out a gain. 10-year up 28.30 seconds, 0.75%. Gold advanced 3.7%, 15.53 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude rallied 5%, 23.76 a barrel. Again, recapping stocks lower, S&P down 67, a drop of 2.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly in Sleepy Hollow, New York. Carol Masser over in New Jersey. And we've been talking a lot about the various aspects of this coronavirus, but one of the places it's really, really becoming a huge issue, Carol, is for workers.
Yeah.
And specifically around the issue of leave, paid, unpaid, what companies are doing, and the impact it has on workers, especially workers at small businesses and those who really live paycheck to paycheck. Dr. Ruth Milkman is here with us, distinguished professor of sociology. She joins us on the phone from New York City. Ruth, great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you've done a huge amount of work around the idea and the concept of paid sick leave. It is something we're talking so much about right now. Help us understand where we are in the conversation, specifically as it relates to the coronavirus.
Well, of course, the U.S. Congress passed some new legislation expanding paid leave a little bit earlier this week, or I guess the middle of last week, which the president signed. And so that's important, and it does expand coverage somewhat, but a lot of people are left out of that. So the dilemma that paid sick and paid family leave are meant to address, which is avoiding making workers choose between a paycheck and taking care of their own health or that of family members, hasn't really been fully addressed yet.
Well, I do wonder, Ruth, whether we get on the other side of this. I mean, Emperor's not wearing any clothes. I mean, we are going to reveal, I hope, how tough it is for many workers. I mean, we've talked about it. We've all had these discussions, but I do wonder if, safety nets among established companies, especially some of those big publicly held, to make sure that their workers all the way down the line are taken care of in situations like that. Or like this.
Well, that would be wonderful. We're not there yet, but I think you're right that the awareness of the issue is, at a new high. Whether that leads to action remains to be seen, in my view.
So, Ruth, you've done a lot of work historically looking at labor in the context of these times of massive upheaval all the way back to the Great Depression. Great Depression is being thrown around a lot, it feels like, right now. Comparisons being made, warnings that this is the sort of thing that we could be in for. Help us understand where you think we stand in those terms.
Well, no one really knows, but
Sure.
It looks like this is going to go on for some time. And I think the predictions that we've been hearing recently of depression level, that is Great Depression level unemployment, are reasonable predictions. Again, we don't know for sure. What's striking to me is how different the pattern of layoffs and unemployment looks than in those days. In the Great Depression and also in 2008, it was industries like manufacturing and construction that collapsed first, especially construction in 2008. Back in the 30s, manufacturing was much more important than it is now. This is the first time really that we've seen a huge surge of unemployment in the service sector. That is something this country doesn't really have much experience with. It's not that those sectors were unaffected by previous downturns, but they were not hit as hard as other sectors and not as quickly. So this is something new. And that has a sort of gender dimension, too, insofar as manufacturing and construction are predominantly male industries, whereas services is more female-dominated in many cases, retail, restaurants, things like that.
I'm so glad you brought that up because, it speaks to this crisis affecting both from a health perspective and an economic perspective, affecting potentially the most vulnerable economically of our society in many ways. And it does feel like that is becoming more and more clear. What are the implications of that?
Well, that's huge. So, we've seen evidence before the virus crisis emerged that many working families do not have enough money to cover themselves for a month if facing a crisis like they are now. So people do not have a safety net, either in terms of their own savings or in terms of government assistance. And that is what the Congress is attempting to address, but there are a lot of holes in the net that they've created thus far. And yes, it's the least fortunate who are the most negatively affected, unfortunately.
Ruth, I do want to ask you, considering the structures that are in place or not put in place, or the existing system that we have, whether it's unemployment benefits or what have you, you hear some of the things that are being considered in Washington to help out individual workers who don't necessarily fall under the umbrella of big companies. What can be done quickly to help out workers, especially like you talk about in the service sector, to help out these workers?
Well, there's been some talk of just offering companies enough money that they can pay the workers even when they're not able to work, or making payments directly to those workers. And I understand that's under consideration right now in Washington, even though it's been delayed. Either of those things would be helpful, but this looks like it's going to go on for a while. So like a one-time payment of $1,000, which is one of the ideas that's been floated, isn't really enough. I mean, that's certainly better than nothing, but people, if they're going to need to pay rent and put food on the table for their families over a period of months, that's really not sufficient. So there is talk of great expansion in unemployment insurance coverage. Right. That would be a good step. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different things that could happen, but anyway.
Well, Ruth,
Yeah.
only got about 45 seconds left. I mean, it does feel like, and I think it speaks to some of the work that you've done, that we may see cities disproportionately affected here. I know you wrote a book about a decade ago, I believe, or 15 years ago, about Los Angeles. I mean, this is where it's really hitting home, right? And on those labor forces.
Well, there are more people in cities, and so therefore the impact is bigger. So that's not really that surprising. I think the whole country is being deeply affected. It's in places where there's more population density, which is cities, not so much LA as other cities, since it's such a suburban layout there. But there's more interaction among people, and therefore likely to be more cases. Although I do think the New York, being the center of it is partly a reflection of the fact that there's so much more testing going on here. It's not necessarily that there's more infections. We just don't have enough data to know that. But
Interesting.
No, this is a nationwide problem, though. It's definitely not limited to big cities.
All right, Ruth Milton, thank you so much. Studying all things related to labor, paid leave, it is going to be an issue that we keep talking about, I think, for a long time, especially when we get more and more details, Carol, about what the Congress passes in this case. What they do is going to be critical here.
All right, Business Week, we're continuing. For those in 99.1 DC, check out Sound On with Kevin Cirilli. That's coming up next.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
Evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
There are times when you have to go it alone, but these should not be those times.
Would the medical crisis in any other central bank execute?
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrow.
Walk me through the dynamics that are going to shape the euro in the coming months.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern.
Do we have the ability to coordinate with this virus?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
When things move this quick, do things break?
Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Back to work Monday. It was a down day. Stocks started the week lower as investors saw Little progress on a congressional spending package to blunt the fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. Measures of corporate credit risk eased after the Federal Reserve announced a massive second wave of initiatives to support a shuttered U.S. economy. S&P ended the day lower, down 67 points, now at 2237. That is a drop of 2.9%. The S&P declined despite a late session surge after lawmakers failed to agree on a stimulus bill over the weekend and again fell short of the needed Senate votes for a deal. Tech shares outperformed. The NASDAQ 100 index did eke out a small gain. NASDAQ was down 18. It fell by 0.3%. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 582 points. That was a drop of 3%. The 10-year up 18.30 seconds with a yield of 0.78%. Gold right now is little changed, up 40 cents, $15.53 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude advancing today by 5.1% at $23.78 a barrel. So it was a down day with the S&P down 2.9%. How close, though, might we be to a bottom? Greg Battle is head of U.S. equity and derivative strategy at BNP Paribas.
Well, I'm not sure that we're there yet. I mean, clearly what we need is a comprehensive agreement in terms of the fiscal measures going forwards from the government. I think one of the things that would give us a lot more confidence that we have seen some kind of local bottom is getting more guidance come through from corporates and to get more confidence in the outlook for the labor market.
Citigroup and Deutsche Bank are among lenders stuck with billions of dollars of debt backed by MGM Grand and Mandalay properties in Las Vegas, with the coronavirus pandemic's impact on casinos hampering the bank's ability to syndicate the loan. Again, a down day on Wall Street. It was an up day, though, for Netflix. Netflix up by 8.2%. Netflix was upgraded to outperform from neutral at Baird, which said the video streaming company should be, quote, a key beneficiary as the coronavirus drives more people to drop their traditional cable TV or satellite services. Along with that, sports leagues suspending their seasons. Recapping, stocks lower, S&P down today by 2.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, all day I've been wanting to talk to this guy, given what we saw, Carol, the moves by the Fed, what we saw in the equity markets today. He understands the world of credit and special situations incredibly well. Dan Zorn joins us, CEO of Arena Investors, joining us on the phone from Long Island. Dan, great to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So first of all, you're well, family's good. Tell me about sort of what you're seeing out in the world.
Well, thank you for asking, and they are. Thanks very much. It's been evolving over the last couple of weeks. We certainly saw equities breaking down, but the kind of over-the-counter institutional markets were relatively immune and really weren't reacting at all. Then we started seeing about a week ago kind of institutionally held, basically arbitrage-related positions starting to come out, starting to get liquidated of various sorts across rate of return things in merger arbitrage and relative value. And then the last, kind of half a week, we then saw large-scale selling and liquidations of kind of institutionally held loans and ABS, offerings of which we probably haven't seen at these levels in several years. In most instances, still a good ways away from kind of where the bottoms of an 08 or an 02 or 98 look like, but certainly a level of activity and a type of activity that's been a long time coming.
So, Dan, how far away do you think we are from that bottom?
I think if you did it kind of apples to apples in a very general sense to where those markets kind of bottomed out, I think it looks like we're probably a third to halfway. Wow. There's a good way to go because, as we talked about in our earlier discussions, there was such an absolute frenzy of credit fueled originally by the kind of depressed risk-free rates from the monetary authorities that things got so overdone that it just means that the trip back is going to be longer and harder.
So I have a thought there, though. So if it wasn't the virus, from what you're saying, because, it was such a frenzy of credit, right? We all talked about all the money that was sloshing around there, whether it's the public markets and, especially even in the private markets. So was it just a matter of time that something maybe not in this magnitude, but we would have had some kind of undoing of all of this?
Absolutely. And it's totally consistent with the last, several hundred years of market behavior. Ultimately, the thing that kind of knocks the market off its chair is going to be something none of us counted on by definition. If we were counting on it, then it wouldn't do that. And so every 5 or 10 or 15 years, you're going to see this. And by the way, it doesn't really seem to fit the kind of normal distribution, because we've had 4 or 5 1 in a million year type things happen, in the last 25 years. So clearly something's amiss. And so when you saw this kind of frenzy happen, I would liken it potentially to, not to 08 or 01 or 98, but really to 02, where the WorldCom fraud happening in the wake of Enron and others happened, where there wasn't a fundamental change even in the general macroeconomic environment as much as an absolute repricing of risk and reward across the credit spectrum.
That's a really smart point. Yeah, keep going. I'm sorry.
There have been there's just been so much. This party has been such a frenzy and it's lasted so long, even relative to kind of normal careers, that the number of people even old enough who are still in the market, who were senior enough to be kind of at the trigger in some of these old times, so to speak, has dwindled. And so this is a big surprise if you just haven't lived that long.
Right.
And so that really exacerbates what you see. And then, as I noted in a bit of a paper I wrote, there's a whole series of secular changes that happened in the wake of the crisis, of the 08 crisis, that have changed the game such that if a situation like this ever arose, the issues that it caused would be greatly exacerbated.
So tell us about that, because that's exactly where I was going to go next, Dan, is these structural changes. And I believe the last time you and I visited on Bloomberg Television, we talked about this. There have been these structural changes that were, at least, if not an intentional, certainly maybe an unwitting reaction to what we saw in the financial crisis. What's the most important structural change that got us here?
Well, I think it's first and foremost, it's just the absolute explosion in the number of asset liability mismatched entities out there, whether it's ETFs or certain types of hedge funds or mutual funds. Just because you allow investors to get their money out daily doesn't mean you can produce it for them. If you're buying loans or buildings or other highly illiquid things that were put into these entities. And so that is a really major issue and that really starts the other ones down the path.
And is that just owing to all the money that was pouring in, especially from the private side of things, or what led to that imbalance?
Well, because ultimately there's going to be, if the customers want it bad enough, someone's going to give it to them. And if someone really, really wants their yield and wants the perception, if not the reality, that they can access their money when they want, someone's just going to finally say, okay, here you go. You can have your money anytime you want. But by the way, and all these disclaimers in the fine print, it tells you how it's not going to actually happen when you need it.
Right. And you're going to get, you're in a world bereft of yield, you're going to get some yield. And as you say, people were desperate for that. All right, Dan Thorne, stick around with us because we got a lot more to talk to you about. You've seen some things, as you've alluded to over the course of your career. You've got history on your side in terms of managing through something like this. We want to know where you're looking at a time like this as you talk to your team as well. All right, Jason Kelly, Carol Masser, and Carol, this is exactly the sort of conversation we need to sort of help us get our arms around where we go from here in a lot of ways.
Well, and also separate what the market environment was, what the economic environment was, above and beyond what's going on with the virus, to understand, some of the dislocations that were happening anyway, to make you understand about maybe what's to come and how long it takes to get there. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Masser along with Jason Kelly. We do want to get another check on world and national news headlines. For that, it's back over to Ed Baxter in San Francisco. Hello there, Ed.
Hello, Carol. Yeah, thank you. As always, a lot going on. Two developing stories in the past half hour. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has put a stay-home order except for essential reasons. This lockdown for at least 3 weeks. And multiple media reports that the Olympics will be postponed. IOC member Dick Pound telling the USA Today likely until 2021. So we'll keep an eye on that as the afternoon goes on. Stimulus bill has failed a second time to pass a procedural vote. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says all Americans need to be included.
We're very close to reaching a deal. Very close. And our goal is to reach a deal today.
But Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says a deal is almost done.
11th hour demands the Democrats have decided are more important than Americans' paychecks and the personal safety of doctors and nurses.
Now, the Democrats say a deal very close. Bloomberg's Emily Wilkins says despite some very heated debate.
Things are moving very quickly right now. Things are very much still up in the air. Negotiations are ongoing.
So there is still hope that things can get done today. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, meanwhile, says the state is issuing an emergency order.
We are today issuing an emergency order that says to all hospitals, you must increase your capacity by 50%. You must.
Some hospitals have been reporting they'll run out of some treatment supplies next week. President Donald Trump publicly messaging that he may want to ease social distancing orders. He has tweeted, "We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself. At the end of the 15-day period, we will make a decision as to which way we want to go." So a definite mixed message. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Ed, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly up here in lovely Westchester, New York, although actually the weather's terrible. I don't know what's so lovely about it. Carol Master, is it rainy where you are too?
It's rainy and it's cold and it's just gray and it's miserable. I've got a tree with lots of buds right out my window, but that ain't cutting it today.
Exactly. Well, it was snowing here earlier, so that doesn't do much for you. So the Olympics, looks like they are going to be postponed. That's at least the word. Have they officially said anything? Have you seen any official word?
No.
All I've seen is Dick Pound, obviously a member of the IOC, saying, look, it's all over but the shouting in terms of a formal announcement, but postponed maybe until next year, 2021.
Yeah, exactly. No, I haven't seen any official announcement, but all of a sudden it was like a flurry of activity about it coming out. So, it's interesting. They had said over the weekend that they're going to figure out its plans within 4 weeks, but I think at this point there's just so much uncertainty, and I think we don't know about, once we get through this and people start to come back to life, is there another second wave of this? So I think there's just too many uncertainties. And if you're putting on something on the size and scope of the Olympics, you need certainty. There's just too much involved. You already have athletes pulling out, right? You have countries saying we're not going to send, I think Canada did it, in terms of not having their athletes go. And I think next year we're starting to hear much more momentum about a vaccine that will be around, and there's ways to kind of deal with this on a much more certain basis. So, this is a big deal. I mean, I just keep thinking of Joel Weber and his team, the editor of Bloomberg Business Week, 2 weeks ago, right, putting on the cover, The Lost Year. And I think safe to say that that's what it will be.
Absolutely, yeah. And the Olympics may be huge. The latest in the sports world. Later on, we're going to talk more about the sports world with Paul Rabel, get a sense of what's going on in the broader, kind of athletics, athletic complex, as it were, because it's a big business story, to say the least. This is Bloomberg. And Bloomberg Business Week is brought to you by the Jewish Communal Fund. JCF's Donor Advised Fund is a smart choice to manage your philanthropy. Open a JCF fund now to lock in a 2020 tax deduction. Visit jcfny.org.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Cheating or competing? When it comes to business, do you know the difference? Say you run into industry mates at an event. You get to chatting, what's been going on, all pretty standard. Talk turns to business. Looks like some of you are going for the same customers. Maybe you can divide and conquer so everyone gets their piece of the pie. Still just business, right? Wrong. When rival businesses agree to carve up markets, it's called market sharing. It's cheating and illegal, and you could be facing big fines or even prison when you get caught. Search cheating or competing to check your business practices before we check them for you. Brought to you by the CMA, the Competition and Markets Authority.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
That's HUD.gov/fair housing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelletta. Down Monday, investors saw little progress on a congressional spending package to blunt the fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. The Federal Reserve today announced a massive second wave of initiatives to support a shuttered American economy. S&P 500 index did decline despite a late session surge after lawmakers failed to agree on a stimulus bill over the weekend and again fell short of the needed Senate votes for a deal today. S&P down 67 points. That was a drop of 2.9%. The Dow down 582, down by 3%. NASDAQ down 18. That was a drop of 0.3%. 10-year up 18.30 seconds. The yield on the 10-year 0.78%. Gold, little change now, up 83 cents the ounce at $15.54. Crude, West Texas Intermediate advanced 5.1%, $23.78 a barrel. Again, recapping, stocks lower, the selling continues. S&P down 2.9%. I'm Charlie Pellett. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thanks so much. Let's continue our conversation with Dan Zwirn, CEO of Arena Investors, longtime investor in distress, special situations, whatever you want to call it. He understands when things go sideways. That's one way to put it. Dan, thanks for sticking with Carol and myself. All right, so what do you do in a market like this? How are you positioning yourself? What are you talking about with your team?
Well, obviously, first and foremost, you're battening down the hatches of anything you have today, and making sure that the theses you had originally stayed in check, which in most cases that's been the case for us. Moreover, you're saying to yourself, or at least we are, we want to optimize return per unit of risk relative to not only the absolute risk, but also the duration and liquidity of what we're involved in. because there are so many possible states of the world, both in the near term and the midterm, that you want to optimize your ability to kind of access opportunity at all times, given a certain level of capital. And so that's led us to involve ourselves in some of the kind of relative value and arbitrage related trading, where people have been basically shut down and liquidated, where there's some very short duration but very compelling yield to access. At the same time, we are very closely monitoring bank loans, bonds, mortgages, and various forms of securitized paper within the ABS world. And as I said, it's not remotely there yet, but there's more coming every day.
Dan, forgive me. I apologize for breaking in. We do have to go to New York City Mayor de Blasio just to listen in, Bill de Blasio, on the latest update on the virus.
The breakout by borough. Queens has 3,621 cases. Brooklyn, 3,494. Manhattan, 2,572. The Bronx, 1,829. And Staten Island, 817. It's a very tough time, but it is not a time for people to give up, to say the least, because this fight has just begun. It is not a time for hopelessness, because we finally see things starting to happen. And first and foremost, New Yorkers are making things happen. I had the opportunity today to be on Roosevelt Island visiting the Kohler Hospital facility. And there, right this minute, new hospital beds are being created right now so that we will have additional capacity to handle this surge in coronavirus cases, and to make sure that everyone else who needs hospital care for other diseases and challenges will have support as well. On Roosevelt Island at Kohler, 100 new beds will be available this week. 240 will be available next week. It's just one example of many to come, where we're finding new ways to create hospital space for those who need it. And of course, we heard great news today about the Javits Center. And so happy to say the Army Corps of Engineers, working with FEMA, working with the state of New York, all of us working together, setting up a new field hospital at the Javits Center. This was something absolutely crucial, and we've been pushing for the federal government to bring in everything they have, every form of support. And everyone knows the great work of the Army Corps of Engineers. This will mean 1,000 new beds. That's going to be extraordinarily helpful. I want to talk about supplies as well, which are absolutely crucial. Equipment and supplies we're going to need to get through not only this crisis over many weeks, but what we need to do to get through just the next days, just the next week or two. And I do want to say, on a positive note, I had a long and detailed conversation last night with President Trump and Vice President Pence. And we got into real specifics about the challenges facing New York City. I emphasized to both the president and vice president that we, particularly in our public hospitals, are dealing with, honestly, a day-to-day reality where we have to make sure that there'll be more and more equipment and supplies coming in to deal with a surging demand of people in need. I'm very pleased to say that conversation focused on ventilators in particular as the single most important, most urgently needed piece of equipment. And today we received the good news